This is Things Police See, First-Hand Accounts, with your host, Steve Gould.
Hey guys, welcome to the podcast that interviews active and retired police officers about their most intense, bizarre, and sometimes humorous moments on the job. I am, in fact, Steve Gould. Thank you for being here. Thank you to the new listeners for finding us. Thank you for the vets that keep coming back for more. I appreciate that. Thank you for all the recent 5-star Apple reviews. You know how much I love that, and I'm going to be reading them randomly as they come in, so as appreciation. And also, thank you to Patreon, keeping the lights on, getting the money coming in to pay for some of the bills the podcast has. Truly appreciate that. Patreon members, the link is in the notes. If you want to be a member, you just click on the link and you can be a patrolman or a sergeant. Get a few different things with either level, but really you're just showing how much you appreciate the show and that you want to support it. If you can't do that, if this is not the right time or you don't have the money, no worries. The show is going to remain free, and you'll be getting 4 to 6 episodes a month for sure. That's kind of the whole point, so everybody can hear it. So don't worry about that. Guys, today we have a returning guest from way back in 2019, episode number 27. Usually you're not supposed to do this, but I'm going to say his name before I bring him on. Sean Thompson. He had a great episode. I was pretty new at it still. I was surprised he even reached out and was like, hey, I listened to the show. I'd come on. I was like, damn, okay, this is great. People are starting to reach out to me. Since then, he's a friend of the show and a friend of mine. We've kept in touch. He's been on a really, really interesting journey in his life. He's now located in Idaho and has his own company, Nine Realms Athletics. And he, when he was on, he told some stories that were, I think he had like 2 or 3 years on the job at the time, and he told some stories that were pretty nuts. He told the first story that ever really made me squeamish on this podcast, and I'll remind him of that when I bring him on. But yeah, just a crazy ass city to work for, San Francisco. And since then, from keeping in touch with him, he's incurred even more trauma from working there. He's been battling PTSD symptoms. And he's kind of at the point now where he's ready to separate from police work. I thought it would be really important for him to come on and just talk about how that happens and what happened to him. Because it's a story that's all too common with police officers. I have multiple friends that are cops that have PTSD. Ken Roybal, a good friend of the show, good friend of mine, is one of them. And it's a real thing. Cops don't like to talk about it, especially if I think it's especially important to hear this if you were getting into police work, because all you want to hear is the bravado and all the running and gunning, but this is important to hear too, because you really need to be vigilant when it comes to mental health. So without further ado, let me bring on my buddy, your friend, Sean Thompson. Sir.
Hey, how's it going, Steve?
I got to tell you guys, I know only Patreon members get the video, but Sean he looks like ZZ Top. He's got the biggest beard. That's awesome, brother.
Not quite a sharp-dressed man, but I'm working on it.
But I can tell you're in Idaho because you got a flannel on.
Right. It's still freezing cold out here, which is amazing.
Dude, I got to admit, because I mentioned on the show before that my wife and I have kind of eyeballed the rest of the country. Like, where could we go? Because we're in Massachusetts, which is like Cali Jr., right? We're like, where can we go drink freedom from a fire hose, And Idaho was one of them. Idaho, Tennessee, Texas, Arizona, kind of, Montana. The problem is, like, Idaho and Montana, if you didn't get in a couple years ago, you're not getting in now. I mean, Montana, the houses are like $800,000. It's like friggin' Cape Cod.
Yeah, it's still it's pretty expensive out here. You could still get like a starter house for pretty. I think they're still going in the, maybe high 2s, low 3s.
Oh, that's not bad.
And so it's not bad, but you do have houses up in the, single family homes in the 5, 6, 7, 800,000 range. So it's getting harder. We're also in the Treasure Valley in the Boise area, about 30 minutes from Boise, and it's that valley's. I mean, it's the most populated part of the state. So you can go outside of there, 20 minutes into some of the other areas, and it gets a lot cheaper. But it's the quality of life, you can't put a price tag on it. So it's
absolutely true.
It's well worth it.
Yeah, I'm glad to see you so happy, man. It's awesome. You got a beautiful family, wife, and young daughter. And dude, the company is. I mean, number one, I used to think my logo was the coolest logo I'd ever seen, but your logo is pretty badass, dude. It's like a Viking dude with a huge hammer. Did you design that, or did you get somebody to do it?
So we had an idea of what we wanted, just for personal use, and then I'm a big Thor fan, and I'm also Swedish, so it just kind of fit. And we had this idea for home gym, and talked to a couple buddies who do graphic design, and threw out some ideas. Buddy threw it together, and I was like, oh man, that's cool. So
Yeah, hell yeah.
Put it on a platform, our deadlift platform at the home gym, and started getting people reaching out like, dude, if you put that on a shirt, I'll buy it.
Yeah.
And it just kind of happened.
Yeah, I got to pick one up, dude. Those are cool. I know Ken got one. Or does Ken have a hat?
Yeah, he's got one of the original hats.
Yeah.
We're about to restart. We've been kind of dormant for the last year and a half, and we'll get into that more later. With being out on injury, I haven't been able to run the company. So
oh yeah, because you can't get a certain amount of income probably when you're on disability or whatever.
They consider it, for work comp, they consider it secondary employment, and you can't do secondary employment while on work comp. So just had to let it kind of dwindle away.
Oof, painful, dude.
It sucks, but we will be back this year. I got to keep some of it kind of close and tight-lipped about it, but we have some big things that we're trying to get done. Hopefully before the end of this year, potentially beginning of next year. But we have some big plans with it. So
awesome, man. I love it. Well, let me know when it's okay to when you're not being secret squirrel, and I'll blast it out there for sure. Absolutely.
Sounds good.
So, Sean, last time you were on, like I was saying before, you told that crazy attempted suicide story. And if you guys haven't listened, it's episode 27, like I said. But I mean, I didn't re-listen to it because it's burnt into my brain. I think it was like a national park or city park, and there was a dude who had cut his wrists open and was pulling veins, tendons, whatever, out of his wrist. That was it, right?
Yep. Yeah, that was one of the one of the parks. Yeah, that was a brutal. And it'll tie in more as we talk about in the episode, talk about trauma and some of those things. You go back, what was it, 2019 when we had that?
Yep.
I was out with a knee injury, and it's weird how you reflect and you look back at those things, and it didn't seem to affect me, or I didn't seem to think about it, and it was one of those, not that it was cool, but it's, you talk to the guys and it's like a cool story. Right?
Well, that's how all cops talk, of course. Yeah.
Right. But, you look back after this whole process that I've gone through and this whole journey, and it's one of those milestones that I can flash back and remember that just had a huge impact physically, mentally. So it's tough, man. It's the job is great. The job is necessary. And we talked about a little bit before, you get in and you're like, man, I want to run and gun and do all the cool, quote unquote, cool stuff.
Right.
But it takes its toll, and I think most people don't realize it, and either don't want to accept it and acknowledge it, or they just don't know it.
Yeah, it's tough, man. I mean, I've always worked for a smaller agency, and not to say to take anything away from small agency cops, and you're gonna see bad stuff that you don't want to see, and it's unavoidable if you're a cop anywhere. But I think, to me, from like never worked in a big city, but knowing big city cops and being friendly with them, we kind of have a natural recovery. You know what I mean? If you go to like a bad crash or a suicide or something, you just see something horrific, you're not going to go to another one probably for quite some time. You're going to have a lot of time to process that. You're not going to be getting sent call to call. You're not going to have these things compound. A lot of and believe me, 30-year town cops I know that have some insane stories. They've been on the show, but the city cops I have on are the guys from big metro areas. When I ask them to come on, they literally have to like think for a week to catalog the things, and then they usually have way too many stories because there's just so much in there. And actually, a friend of my dad's, chatting with him on the phone the other day recently, and he was real nice guy growing up. He's one of these guys that like showed me and my dad like the best places to fish on the outer beach, catch stripers, and just a real manly man, deer hunter type of dude, cabin up north. And he was a cop like 35 years, and he has a service dog. I had no idea. He was telling me about it, and he never showed. You never know. You know what I mean? You never know that this guy was suffering, but it was like the last decade of his career was like, like torture. And now he's finally dealing with it. So I think it would be great if you could tell us like maybe just a synopsis of the events that kind of started to lead up to this, or when did you first start to notice, maybe the events, and then when did you start to notice this could be a problem for you?
Absolutely. So I'll start with the event because I look back now when I started therapy, and looking back after understanding symptoms and things that have been going on and happening, I can look back now and go, oh, I saw this. This started 3-4 years ago, but at the time, we just suck it up and we compartmentalize, and we have to go from one call to the next, and you don't have time to be bothered by those things. So you just figure out a way to deal with it. So
stuff it.
Yeah. So January 1921, my partner and I think we're about 45 minutes on shift. We get a call, and the call was a lady screaming her address saying he's hurting us, which in a lot of places you might think, that's a big, it's a big deal for us. We were like, yeah, this is, we get kind of crazy people that call all the time. It's not an uncommon thing, right?
Sure, and half the calls might dead end to nothing or whatever.
Right. So we're like, okay, we're a couple blocks away. We start going. They call back, and dispatch says this time they said he's hurting us with a gun. So we, perk up a little bit. We get to the scene, park a couple houses out, walk up, don't hear anything, just kind of still thinking it's, your run-of-the-mill call. I start walking up the stairs, and as soon as I'm getting to the top, door opens, 3 elderly women rush out the door, just covered in blood.
Wow.
We're able to get 2 of them down the stairs. One of them ends up, she's fighting with somebody in the doorway. So we're able to get her, I got gun out, get her away, get her down the stairs. Guy shuts the door, runs inside. We're able to get them, help. Again, my partner, he takes him to a neighbor, start rendering aid and all that. And I just lock down the house. Turns into a whole ordeal. I call for obviously backup and tactical team and more units. Come to find out from the victims who are talking to officers that if you guys hear a dog barking, I apologize.
It's very common on this podcast.
one of my bulldogs doesn't shut up. We find out that there is a 17-year-old special needs kid still in the house, and an elderly male in the house along with the suspect. So we have officers who have eyes on the house in the backyard, and they can see the kid isn't hurt. They don't see the older guy. They see the suspect. I'm toying around with, talking to sergeants. Hey, we have to go inside. We didn't really have anything exigency yet. One of the victims had told another officer that the older gentleman was injured pretty bad. And it was around that time that officers saw the suspect start beating the older man. So we put together, apologize if it gets rocky.
No
it's,
problem, brother.
it's still a screwed up call. Partner and I put together a quick team in about, I don't know, 30 seconds. We ran up, I kicked the door, made our way through, ended up getting suspect into custody. Kid was unharmed. Older gentleman was in a big puddle of thick, thick gelatinous blood. Officer started tending to him, got him to medics. It was my scene, so was kind of on going 100 miles an hour the whole time. They rush him to the hospital. Officers who were with him tell me that medics said that he's probably not going to make it. I finally, I'm going through doing my interviews with victims on the scene and talking to them, and choked up, having a real hard time talking to them, which was weird because that never happens.
Right.
Excuse me. Finally, we get interviews done. I go to my partner. I think we got homicide out, and I go, "Hey, I got to go back to the station. I'm gonna go to the bathroom, change." We both had blood all over us, so I hop in the car. It had been a couple hours. We'd been out there at this point, and my wife had called a couple times, and I hadn't been able to get back to her. So I call her back, and I just lost it, broke down, crying on the phone, and that never happened. It was a weird, just couldn't contain it.
Yeah.
Fast forward, I go on paternity leave. That was about a month before my daughter was born. And I just notice as I'm at home, this thing keeps replaying in my head, and I'm calling to get updates from the hospital. I'm texting officers to get updates, and the guys in ICU, guys in rough shape, and the whole time it's I could have done a better job. I should have gone in earlier. I debriefed this call a ton of times with our tactical unit, some training officers. I've done a lot of training with on critical incident response. We did everything by the book, slowed down when we needed to, sped up and took action when we needed to. I don't think we could have done any better, but it, in my head, told myself, it was like, if this guy dies, it's my fault.
Yeah. I think that's pretty natural. A lot of people would be that hard on themselves,
Yeah. I mean, it's like our job is to save people, and the idea that, you failed, in my head was rough.
Sean, can I ask you what was he hitting them with?
Some kind of metal pipe.
Okay.
Turns out they did find, I believe they did find, I wasn't part of the, searching. They did find a firearm near the suspect.
And this kid's 17 years old, right?
No, the 17-year-old was one of the victims.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no. So the suspect is in his 50s, and this was his family that he lost it, and for whatever reason, I won't go into too much detail. Like, I don't think it's even gone to preliminary hearing yet.
Oh yeah, okay, gotcha.
But I talked to him on the phone at one point. I had to talk to him while he was at the hospital, and it was a weird, eerie conversation. That ultimate test of, you have to keep your composure and be respectful.
Right.
It was a quite a test to
I can imagine.
maintain that. So as weeks go by, about 5 weeks later, the older victim was released from the hospital and ended up surviving. But I still had that thing in my brain, for some reason, wouldn't leave, that I almost failed somebody. In reality, I didn't. It's just that, I don't know. It's that, like, have I lost it? Have I, am I not good enough? So this keeps happening over and over for months. So I reach out and I just decide to go start seeing a therapist on my own.
Yeah, good move.
I think one of the things was go to the gym, and we were friends with the owners of the gym, and I guess I had a conversation with one of them, and she talks to my wife later, and she said something of the effect of, "What's wrong with Sean? There's something wrong." And I was like, okay, well, if they see that there's something wrong, like, there's got to be something. So I reached out. I started going to therapy. Man, and through that process of learning what PTSD was, and one of the biggest failures in policing is the educating cops on PTSD and trauma. And I started recognizing all these things of looking back of, me being on scenes and someone comes up to kind of give you, looky-loos always want to talk trash when you're working and
right.
get in their shots.
Very helpful.
Yeah. And I just lost the ability to take it. And any time that would happen, I remember one time telling a lady that if she felt so sorry for this lady who was crazy and attacked these people, that she should take her to the mayor's house or Nancy Pelosi's house and let them deal with it.
Ooh.
So I had a couple incidents where I went back to sergeants and was like, hey, I might get a complaint.
Yeah.
I just lost that filter.
Your cup was like full. You had no more room.
It was full. It was boiling over. Then I realized I was taking it home. I was checked out at home. I wasn't enjoying, this stuff gets hard. Wasn't enjoying my daughter. You have kids, and that sometimes they don't want to go to sleep, and it would be 5 minutes into trying to get her to go to sleep, and I'm just go from 0 to 100, just anger. Because she's fussing and not going to sleep, and I'd be text my wife after. I just feel this anxiety and rage, and I'm like, I need a fucking break. Excuse me, excuse the language.
No, it's fine. It's fine.
Like I need a break. So I had all these things that I didn't realize were happening until I start learning about it. My wife ended up writing a 3-page letter to my therapist about stuff that she saw, things I was doing at home. She never told me I was screaming in my sleep. I was doing building searches in my sleep.
Wow.
After working the riots in 2020, I had nightmares at night where my partner and I's car was getting attacked and we were getting shot at, and I'm doing all this stuff in my sleep, screaming and yelling radio codes and putting out pursuits. Fast forward to September, I go to work and I'm driving with my partner. We have regular partners, and we get to a call, and all of a sudden it hits me that I had blacked out for 5 to 10 minutes while driving.
Wow. Just no recollection of it. You just
nothing. I don't remember the radio traffic. I don't remember the call. I don't remember him and I talking. He's one of my best friends. I called my therapist that moment and said, I need to go see you tomorrow. And I pulled myself off duty the next day.
Yeah, absolutely. Holy cow. You're like losing time. Like when you're sober and at work, that's a huge red flag.
So what they call that dissociation. And And I realized that I had been doing that for 3 or 4 years. And to my acknowledgement, nothing had happened. Um, no one had gotten hurt. I did it driving home. I did it at work. I did it on calls, but I didn't recognize it until I understood what it was. And then I was able to look back and go, oh, it wasn't. I went through this phase of, I'd go to work every day with a splitting headache, and my mood, I would go, I could be in an okay mood. And as soon as I get into work, I'd just be pissed off. And I always tried to justify it with, I'm not drinking enough water. I didn't eat enough today. I didn't sleep enough, which I never sleep, but it was always it was always something else.
And at this time, Sean, you're doing the right things physically, probably because you like to work out. So you're doing that type of stuff. Did you start drinking too much, like off duty?
No, I've been pretty lucky. I have a lot of alcoholism in my family, and ever since I was early 20s, I always had a rule that if I had a bad day and I said to myself at work, today sucked, I need to go home and have a drink, that I would not touch alcohol.
Yeah,
So
smart.
I do a pretty good job of, I never really drank a lot to begin with, but that wasn't an issue. But it was the the stuff that they do talk about, of, at least in our academy, I don't know how yours was, where they go, they give you this speech of, you'll go home and, your wife, your husband will say, hey, let's go to dinner. What do you want to eat? And you just say, I don't know, whatever you want. And they ask if you want to go to a movie, and you say, yeah, fine, whatever, you pick it. And they go, that's just the job. You're going to be tired, and, it's stressful, but that's just part of the job. No, that's not just part of the job.
Right.
Those are parts of PTSD. It's parts of trauma, and there's not enough education around it, um, for people to recognize those things, recognize what's going on.
Sean, do you think that I can't help but think about like World War II? Lots of vets came home. There was PTSD, of course. They called it being shell shocked, I think was their term, but it wasn't a thing. And I'm not saying there wasn't plenty of it. There was, but the reception they got, kind of the attitude towards them was very positive. There was parades, they were heroes, there was lots of stuff like that. Then you have the Vietnam guys.
Yeah.
And they come back and it's like people are spitting on them in airports. Like that whole negative aura surrounding them, and it popped up a lot more. And I can't help but think that you would incur this either way, from what you've seen. But how much do you think the culture of, and I'm not saying, I don't want to get political about your police department, but just large city police departments in general, how much do you think the culture and the negativity in the media and the hate getting tossed at you all the time contributed to that? I mean, that's got to be a multiplier.
Yeah, quite a bit. I mean, when you go through and you look at, distrust of the public, and from like my perspective and standpoint of, everything is shitty in the world, and the world is just full of terrible people, and a lot of these things, from my experience, stem from working a lot of protests, working riots. And I remember working a parade, I won't say which one, but I'm marching in the middle of the street, and we're protecting the people, protesting, marching. And I remember one of them screaming in my face, I hope your family gets raped and murdered.
Oh,
And that's every day I could be with a victim who was a minority, and I'm helping them, and someone comes up berating me, telling I'm harassing them. And it was constant. It was all day. So you just get this nonstop beratement, and then you see it in the media, and you see it. So it takes a huge toll. You're out there. None of us get in the job for recognition,
right.
whether it's from your department or public. But that's different than just constantly being beat down for putting your life on the line to try to help people that don't care about you.
Yeah, and then it's even compounded by like almost all the major cities on the West Coast. The department itself seems to hate its own officers, or at least the chief and the admin have no problem throwing people under the bus and just kind of acquiescing to whatever insane social justice thing the mayor wants to do.
Yeah.
It's like, let me take a knee. I'm sorry. Yes, we're terrible. They're terrible. So now you don't even have like a leader that's like got your back. You know what I mean? It's kind of like, and then all the talk about, we should really get rid of qualified immunity. Like the one thing that like, you're acting in good faith, the court can protect you. Let's get rid of that too. It's like, it's maddening. It's insane.
It's really easy to go. It's really easy to say we love our officers, we support police, but we recognize there's things that need to change in policing. And without going too much into it, I'm one of the few that I definitely think there's places where there's things that can change. It's not a perfect system. There are bad people who make it in, but that's everywhere.
It's like any business. You can always be improving. You can always be making your place more efficient.
Right. But you can do both. They're not mutually exclusive. But you get this place where it's like constantly just ragging and shitting on the cops that have to be out there every single day, and that stuff inflames the public and emboldens the public to do the same thing because there's no recourse. And then behind closed doors, you get those same people, the higher ups that have your back and support you behind closed doors. But when it's the face of the public, then
see you later.
Throw you under the bus. The drop of the dime.
Yeah. Sean, as you're going through this and you're realizing this is just, you have a problem here. This is something you have to face. Was there an event that finally made you say, all right, this is it. I need to get out?
It was just the whole going through. So I went out in September. I started working with the psychologist and was doing treatment. Without going into too much, my work comp was denied, and then I had to fight that. So I went without treatment for, 5 months, 4 or 5 months.
Oh man, that seems inhumane. Right.
I was lucky enough to have an opportunity. One of the lieutenants in the department was able to get me into a inpatient treatment program. It's called the West Coast Post-Trauma Retreat through the First Responder Support Network, I believe it is.
Okay.
If people want to look it up, it's amazing. The retreat I went to was on the West Coast, but they do satellite ones. I think 5 or 6 of them throughout the country, and it was a live-in retreat, 5 days, just for first responders. I think there were 6 of us there as patients, and then probably 15 people or so, staff, 15 to 20, that are all either clinicians or former first responders themselves. And that was a lifesaver. Anybody who's having trouble, these programs have grants, they have ways of financing if you can get in if you're having trouble. It was an amazing experience to get to go do. It's really tough. It's 14, 15 hours a day of nonstop therapy.
Wow.
Just crying and doing EMDR treatments, and it's rough, but it's a really good experience. And going through that, I do my move, I get my work comp approved, and I start working through with a therapist again. And I'm just going through the process, and going to all my appointments and working on everything at home, and really trying to focus on the improvements that I need to make and techniques. If I couldn't go out to a concert with my wife without having issues. I would sit there and she would look at me and go, "Are you all right?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm fine." I'm not, but
Right.
tell her I'm fine. She goes, "Well, you're stuttering," and I don't have a stutter, and I couldn't be around people who weren't cops. Um, so just go through the process and you work on these things, and we get that fear of I'm just a dumb cop. I have no other skills. I didn't go to college. What can I have nothing to fall back on. I have nothing else.
So many of us, including me, feel like that.
Right. I got nothing to offer the world other than being a cop. And one of the things I learned in the retreat from one of the guys in there, he helps first responders get careers after they retire, and he brought up all the things that we do on a daily basis are skills that the majority of the public don't have. Your ability to handle critical incidents and de-escalate situations, and for me, writing reports and writing search warrants and running a team and running an incident and all these things that we deal with and do every single day are huge assets to companies
Sure.
and places that is far beyond. I have a degree.
They talk about extreme problem solving,
Right. The ability to go into a call and be able to, on a dime, have to switch your plan based on what a suspect is doing or what the crowd is doing or new information. Like being able to, be fluid and do all these things are huge assets. So that kind of took some of the fear away of the job, or not having the job. And then I don't know, at one point it just kind of hit me. I knew I couldn't go back. I love some of the people, I love the job. But I kind of shifted my mindset. I knew, like, I swore an oath to protect the public, and I knew the symptoms that I had, blacking out, the things that were happening to me were not feasible and safe for the public. It's a disservice to the public for me to be out there carrying a gun. And I just knew it wasn't. There's nothing. I couldn't go back to that. Therapists agreed. Multiple doctors said the same thing, and back in December they told me that I'm not returning to work. So now I'm in the process of just kind of burning time and waiting for my retirement. But it's hard. It's that transition. A lot of guys go through this process of, and that's where the therapy and the retreat is so good. Of like, I went through this of I'm not good enough for the job. Why am I'm weak? Why is it that this guy can go to this call and it doesn't affect him, but it affects me? And why am I not strong enough? Am I not man enough? Am I not good enough? But it's just a chemical. It's a thing. You can't control it. Some people can go to those incidents, and some people can't. I think the majority of people have these symptoms and issues. They just don't want to recognize it and don't want to see it.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, look at the look at the average lifespan of a cop when he retires. They're dropping dead at 55. That's because they're stuffing all this stuff. You know what I mean? Someone might be better at faking it, or not recognizing in themselves what's happening, but it 100% affects everybody who does a job. Totally. And they just become, and this because you work, at a huge police department, those guys just become like embittered, bad cops. They just kind of try to skate through the rest of it, because because they think they can do nothing else, because they think this is it. It's crazy. The PTSD is crazy. Like someone on the show said that they, the first time they had like a problem, they were just in McDonald's in line, nothing going on, like no emergency. And they just started to feel that fight or flight response.
Yeah.
And they're just standing there in line waiting to order their McDonald's, and they're like shaking.
Yeah.
And just a complete loss of control. Like I can't breathe good. I'm going to pass out, and then that'll be embarrassing because I'm in uniform. Like the whole thing. I mean, it can just, if you don't address it, it can just really, really destroy you. And I know what you're saying about, my father, cop a long time. And I was always told about him. He could be having a sandwich in the room with someone who just blew their head off with a shotgun. Yeah. Complete opposite of me. Like it bothers me. The first thing I think of the next day is that thing I saw. And it's like a big process for me to get through that thing. I've always been a talker. I try to spare my wife any details that would then traumatize her. But, you share maybe a abbreviated thing of what happened. And that has always kind of helped me. But yeah, my dad just, and to this day, he's just like, it doesn't, that's just the way he is. It's the way his brain is built. But my mom's side of the family is the big Irish side. Yeah. They're very emotional. They're huggers. They're wear their feelings on their sleeve, and that's me. You can't really control how you're programmed.
Right. And it took me listening to another podcast, and it was a veteran, and he was, I don't remember how it came up, but he was talking about it, and I always think of him as this macho guy, and he says what he thinks, and he doesn't give a shit about anybody's opinions, and he's talking about it, and what I'm expecting him to say about PTSD is guys are wusses, they can't handle it there. But he starts talking about it as, like I said, it's a chemical thing, and it could be something small, it could be something big, and it just triggers different people differently. And it doesn't make you weak, it doesn't make you less of a man, it doesn't make you less of a cop or a person. It's just something in you that it doesn't settle with those things, and it hits everybody differently. What I would recommend to people is, like you saying, you spare your wife details, which is great. I try to do the same thing, but I would always probably overshare with my wife.
I've done that too.
But I think I was always at the school of thought of, I'd tell her everything going on. I tell her the calls I go to. So if there's something, if I'm not right, then she understands why.
Right.
But I wasn't listening to people who were telling me something was wrong. I wasn't listening to people who, like my wife, are you okay? I'm tired. I, worked late. But we take all these things, and there's probably people telling you in your family that you've changed since you became a cop. And you probably have. And
right.
And some of it's good. You have to. A lot of it's not. And I don't think it's just part of the job. It's part of what comes along with the job. And I've had a few people. I did Ken's podcast talking about, preparing for the academy, and I've had, I don't know, 7, 8, 9 people reach out to me about questions about academy stuff. And one of the things I think I've told all of them is, when you start, find a therapist right away. Even if you don't need it, just find one, build that relationship, go talk to them about personal life, family life, whatever. Because when that day comes and you need help, you want to have that familiarity and that comfort and access to go to somebody, because most people don't think they have that.
Yeah, absolutely. I was lucky enough in my first place I worked for had, I think I had my first like bad fatal, and it was like a young girl, and I had to do the notification, and the mom answered the door, and there was a 4-year-old there that was, of course, the girls who got her block knocked off in a convertible, and it was just bad. And I had a sergeant that was like kind of going out the back door a couple days after, and he said, just so you know, it's only $10 to unload all that. $10 copay. That's what it was at the time. He said, it's something we got, and it's a good idea for people to do that. And
yeah,
I never even would have considered it, except that now I have like a senior sergeant telling me like he approved of it. Yeah. And that made a huge difference. And I did go talk to somebody. And it was hugely beneficial because there was a few traumatic things early in my career where I did have that moment where I was like, I don't know if I can do this for like, I don't know, or I don't know how long I can do this. Basically, I was like, because it was like you said, you think you're going to be running a gun and catching bad guys, but there is an awful lot of horrific things your eyes will be laid on. And they stick in your mind like molasses, you know, and I didn't know how to deal with it. I didn't know how to get out of my mind, and I started feeling, I'd never had anxiety in my life, and I felt anxious, and you don't know what it is because you're like, what is this feeling? I think that's what it is. I just don't think we identify it. But I had this guy say this to me, and it was hugely beneficial for me. And I was in no means in a big city, but we had our things that happened, and just having that guy even on retainer, or having like you said, he knew who I was now. And if I picked up the phone, yeah, hey Steve, I can fit you in tomorrow or whatever. Huge. It's just huge. It was huge for someone to sit there and look at me and go, what you just told me is not, that's not a normal thing to see. Because your reaction is normal, but you're seeing things that are not normal. People don't incur the frequency of trauma like people in your line of work. It's just not a normal thing for people. So even just hearing that, I was like, I felt off the hook. I was like, you know what I mean? I was like, okay, this is okay. It's okay to feel screwed up, you know?
And I think it's another level. Having a kid changes things. And
dude, I drive home sometimes if my mind wanders, and those terrible parent thoughts of like, what if this happens to the kid? What if this falls on them? What if, did I secure my gun safe? What if he blows his own? You know what I mean? Like exactly. And then, but you actually have the real life images to apply to your thing. So it's like, I literally will say out loud, stop. He's fine, or they're fine. You know, I know exactly what you're saying.
I had, and you're talking about death, is like, I had one, it was towards the end of, me working, and it was an OD, 27-year-old girl, and was with her boyfriend, and, we get there and they're working on her, and, there's no crime. It's, in that city, you get it. That's a weekly occurrence, depending on where you work, probably a daily occurrence, multiple times a day.
Sure.
And it was kind of no big deal until we don't do notifications. But the medical examiner's there, and the dad showed up, and we had to do cop stuff, and here's a police report number, and sorry for your loss. If you need anything, feel free to call the station, reach out. And he asked me, he's like, how do I explain, this was the oldest of his kids, he goes, how do I explain to her younger siblings what happened?
Oof.
And I'm like, I have a daughter coming in a couple weeks, and I had nothing.
Yeah.
And that one hit me hard to this day, because you just put yourself in that person's shoes of, now you have to explain to your other kids what happened to your oldest daughter. And then there's the impact this stuff has on our family. My wife was, in a law enforcement type position before. She was animal control with the sheriff's department. And
oh, really? I didn't know that.
Yeah. And she would be in tears coming home because of calls I had to go to, or stuff that I was doing at home. They live a life of, basically being single, because we're I worked a lot. I worked, man, I don't know, 60 hours a week. Was always at work. She got to a point where she told me she almost left,
Wow.
and it's we don't realize when we when we bring those things home that how much it affects the family we live with, our husbands, wives, our kids. Um, so I've kind of, like I was telling you, I've kind of taken it upon myself to be, I'm like you, a talker. I'm comfortable telling people my life story, and I like sharing these. I've had probably a dozen people or so from the department that I know have reached out to me with questions,
That's great.
stuff that they've gone through, and it's like a double-edged sword, right? You realize you're not alone, and it's not just you, because through the whole thing, for me, I've been sitting at home for, I don't know, 18 months now, and you just go through, you feel lonely, you're isolated. Um, you realize it's not just you, it's a lot of people. But then you realize how little people know about what's going on and how little help there is, or that they think there is. I've had two people reach out to me, tell me that they were about to eat their gun. One of them was about to pull the trigger when a loved one called and stopped them.
Wow.
And it's tough. It's hard hearing that, and it sucks. Like, I feel for those people that think that that's the only way out
Yeah.
of 15 years for them of giving everything to these places, and there doesn't seem to be anybody who wants or willing to help them.
Sean, if say this scenario comes up where you're at this point and you really just need to reach somebody right in that moment, what do you think for a cop the best course of action is, or the quickest way?
I mean, in that moment, personally, oh man, I think there's a couple. I think reaching out to somebody. That's why I try to tell people my phone's always on. If you need, call me anytime, text me. Um, there's the suicide prevention hotlines. If you're not at that level, I guess if you quantify it in different stages, go to your department. Go to human resources. If you don't feel comfortable with that, just look up a therapist. It might cost you some money. Hopefully you have insurance through your department. It's well worth the copay to just reach out to somebody. Um, I'm terrible. I don't know if and there should be a, like, suicide prevention hotline for first responders specifically.
That's what I was just thinking. I was like, do I not know that, or does it not exist?
But if there's not, there should be.
Dude, I've seen people reach out in Facebook groups I belong to.
Yeah.
Like I post my podcast to a bunch of different groups that allow it, like Drinking Bros First Responders.
Mm-hmm.
And I've just come across a statement where there's a first responder wants to hurt themselves, and then there is like hundreds of comments, and this person gets the help from, of all places, Facebook, which,
Yeah.
they say nothing good happens on Facebook, but those are good things. Like, you have all this reinforcement on there, and all these people, veterans, cops like you that have a lot of trauma, immediately helping and reaching out. So that's something people can do too.
I think it's Drinking Bros Vigilant Guard is the Drinking Bros group on Facebook. Drinking Bros have a ton of groups on Facebook.
Right.
I think Vigilant Guard is the one for, like, vets and first responders, and I'm part of that group. And there were a couple people in there who had posted things of, they want to kill themselves, they don't see a way out, and I'd message with people, and I would send people a private message, reach out, what's going on, you know, what's happening in your life. And there's a few people in those. It got to be a lot. It's hard. I obviously at that point I wasn't in a place to help other people.
Yeah, you can't take too much on with where you're at either.
Right. What I would recommend to people is open yourself up to other people. Check in with people. If you see somebody and you think that they seem off, like one of your battle buddies, one of your beat partners, go talk to them. Ask them if something's going on. I know it's hard. There was cops that I worked with that I couldn't stand. Check in on them. You don't maybe they are the way they are because something they're going through, and you don't know.
Yeah, you'll never regret it.
Right. And if you are feeling a certain way, reach out to somebody. Guarantee people you reach out to. It sucks. There's still that stigma and that response of, because it's a macho job.
Sure.
There's still going to be those people who are like, oh, you're a pussy. That guy can't handle it. All right. It is what it is, but you're going to find people who feel the same way. And there's a lot of people who've gone to therapy, and they've gone to talk to somebody. They've gone to a retreat. They just don't advertise it. But if you ask for help, there's going to be somebody there to help.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right.
Not always right away, but just keep trying.
Right. Yeah, you're right about those. Like, you see these operators that are social media giants now or whatever, Jocko and whoever else. But those guys, people should keep in mind too, these guys are super efficient at everything. They're highly efficient humans. Like they're built a little different, but those guys also have trauma, and they probably did exactly the right thing to deal with it. They talked to somebody, they got the help they needed, because that's who they are. That's like ingrained in them. A guy like Jocko is like one in a million. You're not going to meet. That's why his podcast, he posted it, and then he had like 5 million downloads a month. It's because the guy's, he's one in a million. He's like a elite level. But even those guys will talk about it. They have issues with this stuff. Yeah. So I hope I hope there's been enough exposure about this issue. I hope that whole idea is going away, because what's the alternative? Just crashing and burning? Is that more manly is it more manly to not be a good head of your household and just destroy your family? That's the least manly thing you can do. You know what I mean?
Right. And there's a fear too that people think if they reach out, their career's done.
Yeah.
Their job's over. And that goes back to that, what can I do? I don't have any other skills. I'm not smart. Just because you reach out for help doesn't mean your career's done.
Right.
It's just acknowledging you have something going on, and it could the other side of that coin is you don't reach out because you're worried, and it could shorten your career even more because you get that burnout, or you're that guy or girl whose family leaves, and you drink yourself away and go down. There have been guys that get hooked on pills because they have these things going on. Next thing you know, they find themselves had some that have found themselves in jail.
Yeah, you join the other side.
Right. And so just because you acknowledge you have something going on doesn't mean it's going to take your career away. And if it's bad enough to where you can't go back, there are options out there. There's work out there. You have skills that you can offer other places. It might be a little hard to find. But there's even, again, I don't have the name off the top of my head, but it was in California, and it was an organization, and they helped cops that were retired with PTSD. They helped them find careers with businesses that are looking for people with those skills.
Yeah, Mike the cop, he's helping cops get their real estate license.
Right.
So there's definitely that going on out there. Sean, so you identified this problem, you've dealt with it. Where are you at now? What is your day-to-day like now? Are you feeling like you got, I'm not going to say you're all better or something, but do you feel like you have the tools now to cope?
For the most part, it's just implementing those things every day. I still get angry. Um, it's not as bad. Like times my daughter woke up at 2:30 this morning, and and I'm like, she woke up at 4:30 yesterday. She got up at 2:30 today. I had 2 hours of sleep, and I was like, you need to go back to bed. And
Yeah.
there's those times where I still get that anxiety, that rage that builds up when she's being cute for an hour trying to talk to me while I'm trying to get her to go back to sleep.
Yeah.
But I feel like I'm more equipped. I push myself more with going out in the public and going to public places and going to social events to try to test those waters, and force myself to face the things that are hard for me.
Would you say it's accurate? Or go ahead. Sorry.
No, go.
I would say, would you say that it's accurate that, like, from what I hear, it's like you heal and you have, like you said, you have the tools, and then, but the setbacks are inevitable. Like you might find yourself 2 years from now at a concert and be like, I'm doing it. And then halfway through you might, all right, we got to go, or this isn't, and then but that's normal. Like you're going to have setbacks, but I think from what I hear, they're going to be further and further apart, that type of thing.
Yes. And everybody's different. Talk to some guys that, 20 years after they retire and they've gone through everything, something comes up on TV and it just triggers. Everyone has, in therapy, they talk about triggers, and that's, it's just something that hits you. So they get few and far between. I don't watch much news on TV anymore, but sometimes,
it's a good move. That alone is a good move for your mental health.
Right.
Honestly.
Last time I saw a big riot thing, that I started getting that anxiety, that taking bottles and remembering those things, but then I remember I don't have to go back to that,
right?
And I'm not going back to that. I still get it. It's a little different place now. I get the fear and kind of the anxiety and worry for the other officers. Like, I have really good friends that are still out there dealing with it every day, whatever, going to the same calls. And so I hear those things and I see those, and I worry for them, and I text them, I call them, make sure they're good. But it's a different feeling. When you have the tools, it's a life changer.
Yeah, that's awesome to hear, brother. So Sean, how much can you talk about what your next move is? Or what? I'm excited to hear about Nine Realms Athletics, but I know it's kind of like on pause.
So we're going to bring the clothing back. We have some stuff we're working on with that. We're going to be expanding. We'll just say expanding Nine Realms Athletics.
Excellent.
Into doing some more things. We want to help youth, and I want to help. We want to do work with first responders, veterans, stuff like that. So that's going to be a big aspect of what our next move is. And I feel at this point, I kind of feel like it's my calling to use what I've gone through and deal with to try to give other people help and tools and make those people feel like they're not alone and there's people out there to help them. So without giving too much away, we're going to be doing that. I will come on and talk to you as soon as we can officially announce the next big thing. But we're working to try to make that happen, and try to find a way to help people. I can't do it as a cop anymore, but that doesn't mean that there's not other ways to help
Of
the
course.
community and help the public. So,
dude, that's awesome, brother. I think this interview was fascinating to hear you talk about this, to hear it from somebody who's like gone through it and is still currently going through it, man. So I really appreciate you coming on. I was honored to have you again, man.
no, thank you for letting me do it. And to anybody listening, at the Nine Realms Athletics Instagram, I'm usually the one. It's either me or my wife, but I'm usually the one who responds, or can shoot me a message if any listeners have questions and they have something bothering them. I'm an open book. People can reach out to me. They can ask me questions.
Awesome.
We'll help as much as possible. And I don't tell people. I'm not gonna tell anybody, so and so called me. That stays between me and whoever reaches out to me. So
awesome. We'll put a link to all your contact stuff in the show notes so people can awesome. Follow you and do that. And thanks again, brother. Can you hang out for a couple seconds when I do the outro?
Of course.
All right, brother. I'll be right with you. Ladies and gentlemen, the great Sean Thompson. Great to have Sean back again. Man, that was fascinating and really eye-opening hearing him talk about that stuff. And I hope it reaches. I hope it makes everybody more aware, but I hope it reaches the right people, the people that maybe needed to hear that message. And like Sean said, he's got a heart for serving, and he's more than happy to have you reach out to him. Follow him on Instagram, 9 Realms Athletics, and 9realmsathletics.com. Thank you so much to Sean for coming on, guys. It is the time of the show when I thank the Patreon sponsors. Oh, man, I don't have it set up. I'm really sorry, guys. I'm a loser and an idiot. Let me get this thing. Oh, boy. See, the thing is, I got to go on, and then I got to do the filters so I don't accidentally shout out people that canceled on me. Let me see here. And who I'm talking about is Dan from Burley Boards, Madeline Cook, Derek Warden, Nick Fisher. I'm shouting out the wrong people. I'm going to keep going. Steven, Scott Young, Wayne Miller, Nick News, the great Tom Connell, Dennis, Evan Dolby, George Tessier, Motocrop Chronicles, Amanda Grebby, Greg Gaboy, Jacob Martin, Emmy Martin, Ben Peters, the great Scott Minkler, Tammy Wall, Sean Clifford, Braden Walker, Caitlin Thomas, Sasha McNabb, Corey Payne, the great Mike Wynn, Nathan Gowan, Jason Loud, John G. Good, Lauren Simpson, Christian Hayala Sigurdsson, obviously from Sweden, Brandon Hooker, Jake Pinedo, John Shoemaker, James Rose, Benjamin Noriko, Seth Wright, Tony Fahey, Bill Broadway, William James Long, that's Deputy William James Long to you, Jeremy Woods, Chris June, Adam Mihal, Gary Steiner, and the handsome Lane Campbell. Almost made it. I got to fix that track, but thank you guys. I love you. Thank you for the constant support. I have little sponsorships here and there which help, but you guys are the constant. You're my best girl. I appreciate you. Thank you. And with all that being said, folks, I will see you next week.